Okay, so when it comes to annotating a piece of poetry or any sort of text at all, I like to use the 5 T's. Okay, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to write those across the top. I personally like to use different colours. You don't have to do that, but it's just a good way to help you to work out what things are in the poem. So I'm going to write them across the top here. So I'm going to look for tone. I'm going to look for textual form. I'm going to look for themes. I'm going to look for the tail, and I'm going to look for techniques. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to choose blue for tone. Okay, and so I'm going to read this poem by Robert Frost, Fire and Ice. Some say the world will end in fire, some say in ice. From what I've tasted of desire, I hold with those who favour fire. But if it had to perish twice, I think I know enough of hate to say that for destruction ice is also great and would suffice. So it's a poem that's got a little bit of rhyme, a little bit of imagery that we can work out, and we're going to use these 5 words to help us sort of hone in on those. So first of all, I'm going to look for the tone words. I'm going to use blue, and I'm going to switch colours between for the other elements. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is find tone words. So I think that the idea of some suggests uncertainty. All right, and so when I annotate, I can just write down words that come to mind, or I can identify things. And I've got that word some twice, so I've got that ×2. The world will end in fire. So I think end is an interesting word in terms of tone. End, then you've got the idea of fire, you've got the idea of perishing. So I'm going to go fire, perish, fire, destruction, hate. They all seem to be tone words. And so what I can do is I can write the word tone up here, and I can start writing down some words that suggest to me a tone of ending or destruction. So I've got end, fire, fire, perish, hate, destruction. All right, as you can see, it's starting to look a little bit messy, but that's what annotating does. Okay, so that might be all I do for tone. All right, the other thing here is I've got the idea of I think, I hold. You've got this idea of it being a personal perspective. So I'm just going to write personal perspective. All right, I'm going to put in brackets, and again, this is a tone issue. All right, and so I could actually go through and work out, well, who is saying this? Who is the persona? And so for me, I think that you've got this idea of Robert Frost being the persona of the poem. Okay, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do textual form. I'm going to change colours this time, just so that I can see things that are different. And so I've got 4 stanzas. All right, stanza 1, stanza 2, stanza 3, and stanza 4. And interestingly, we've got some words that rhyme. So we've got fire and desire. We've got, it doesn't work here, twice hate. Fire, desire, fire, twice ice. So these 2 rhyme. Okay, and then you've got suffice as well. But interestingly, you've got 2 lines in these 3 stanzas, and then the 4th line is a little bit disrupted. It's got this weird thing where the second part jumps down. Okay, I'm not quite sure what that is, but that's an interesting thing. So we've got 2 lines and then 3 lines. All right, and so perhaps even there's a sense of uncertainty here. All right, and that comes into that idea of these tones here of destruction, end, fire, perish. Okay, now I could do heaps more with structure. I could talk about how many the rhyme and the meter and the rhythm within each of these lines. I could talk about how many syllables there are, but just for the sake of this video, I'm going to move on to themes. I'm going to change colours again, and this time I'm going to go to purple. All right, so here we've got this idea of saying, say, okay, and then experience, from what I've tasted of desire. So we've got this idea of experience. All right, so Robert Frost's experience, and this is someone else's experience. All right, and Robert Frost is comparing his experience with their experience. Then you've got this idea again, like the tone words, you've got perishing. you've got fire, you've got ending, and then you've got this idea of I think I know enough of hate. So again, this idea of hate, and he has had enough of hate. So I'm going to say his experience of hate there is he has had enough. The persona has had enough. Okay, to say that for destruction, ice is also great and would suffice. Then you've got this contrast, this theme of ice and fire. Ice and fire. So I'm going to write the word theme here. We've got ice and fire, and we've also got the idea of destruction. And destruction is linked with the idea of hate. Okay, now ice and fire, let's separate those things out again. Ice is cold, fire is hot. Right, ice is hard, and fire is dynamic. Okay, ice is lonely and miserable, fire is intense, and it's sort of unavoidable. So when you're annotating, you're starting to work out what some of these words mean. Okay, so we've got this idea, we're going to go back to the idea of personal experience. I've tasted of desire. Desire is an interesting word that comes in with these ideas of ice and fire. Desire is a passionate emotion. Okay, so I'm going to go on now to looking at the idea of tale. I'm going to change to red just to help me separate. Now, tale is all about the idea of what's the story that's been told. And so we're looking for the persona of the speaker. All right, we're looking for the setting. And we're looking for perhaps even things like plot. Okay, so the plot here is about, it looks like a contrast. The whole way through he's contrasting this idea of destruction. So we've got a plot of contrast. We've got this idea of a plot of ending. And we've got this idea of destruction. That seems to be the plot. All right, and the persona, who seems to be Robert Frost. All right, his personal experience and his emotion suggests that he does not want to end in fire. Okay, so he does not want to end in fire. Does not like fire. And for me, that suggests down here to say that for destruction, ice is also great and would suffice. I would much rather die from getting cold than die from burning to death. So I think there you've got this idea of compromise, perhaps even negotiation with the dead. Could I negotiate with death and then decide how I die? And then this idea of suffice and ice lends a rhythm all the way through, which suggests this is a slow moving towards death. Okay, and so the last thing that we want to do is have a look quickly at the techniques. Now, techniques are obviously the most important thing for communicating ideas. And so you've probably noticed that lots of these things are already techniques. For example, having a persona, having a plot, having tone words. And so word choice can be an interesting thing. So I'm just going to go here with word chains as a technique. We can also call this a lexical chain. Okay, so there's my first technique. I'm going to look for words that fit together. So we've got fire and ice, all right, and they're elemental. All right, and we've got this idea of an uncertainty, an uncertain word chain. We've got some. We've got tasted. We've got desire. We've got favour. We've got the idea of but. Okay, and so I can go through here and go say some, from what I've tasted. Again, the idea of tasted, but, all right, I think. All right, these are all words of uncertainty. All right, to say that for destruction, ice is also great and would suffice. All right, it suffices, but it's not certain. So none of these words, or this sort of word chain, this lexical chain, these words all suggest an uncertainty. Okay, so that's a word chain. Now let's have a look for imagery. All right, so if I go for imagery as another technique, and I say, again, you've got ice, cold, fire, destruction. So we've got the words fire, fire, desire, hate, ice. Right, those are emotion words or emotion images. All right, we've also got the idea of the senses. Lots of sense of the idea of what you feel. Fire, ice, desire, hate, they're all emotions. So we've got this idea of emotive words, another technique. Emotive words. We've also got this idea of rhyme, okay? So we've got fire, desire, hate, twice, ice. Those things all there create a rhythm and a sense of movement through the poem. You've also got the idea of alliteration and assonance, right? Ice, suffice, perish. So those things there start to create a sense of the movement through the poem. Okay, and you can see when you start to annotate a poem, I've got a bit of an idea about what this poem might be about. For me, I think this poem might be about death. It might be about the idea of suffering, the end, the uncertainty of how you might die. Not sure, but that certainly gives me some ideas. So hopefully this will help you to work out how you might go about annotating a piece of poetry using those 5 different things. Now, of course, with the techniques, there are hundreds of techniques. And these, of course, are all similar to each other. Themes and persona, setting, plot, the textual form, all those things are techniques. Hopefully that gives you a bit of an idea.